Sometimes the biggest stories aren't hiding in some secret leaked document. They're just sitting there, right out in the open, buried in a public record. It all starts with a single number, just waiting for someone to pull on the thread and ask, wait, what is this? So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. Our story kicks off right here with something that looks honestly pretty boring. It's a routine press release from the Department of Defense listing the contracts they handed out for the day. It's public, it's out there for anyone to see, but let's be real, it's the kind of thing most people would just skim right past, a wall of text. But buried in there, that's our clue. $105,545,414. I mean, look at that. It's a huge number, but it's also super, super precise. This isn't just some ballpark figure. It's a very specific amount of taxpayer money being handed over for a very specific reason, which of course leads to the big question, right? Who got this 9-figure payday? And what exactly did the US government get for it? This is the question that starts our whole journey. Following this money trail is going to lead us straight to a corporate giant that operates at the absolute center of the US government. Okay, so the contract tells us who got the cash, a company called Leidos. But who are they? All right, so here's the official breakdown. The description is, well, it's a mouthful. They're into everything from defense and aviation to IT and even biomedical research. Basically, they're the people you call for the really, really tough problems that require a ton of engineers and scientists. Let's put it a simpler way. Think of Leidos as one of the government's go-to problem solvers. When there's a huge, complicated challenge that involves deep science, heavy-duty engineering, and a lot of tech, there's a good chance they're getting the call. They are deeply, deeply embedded in projects that our national security and infrastructure depend on. Okay, let's dive into the numbers, because that $105 million contract, the one that got us started, turns out that's just a drop in the bucket. To really get a sense of Leidos, you gotta see the bigger figures. For starters, their annual revenue, we're not talking millions, we're talking billions. $17.2 billion. All of a sudden, our little $105 million clue, it's not even 1% of what they do in a single year. Kind of wild when you think about it. And this isn't some small boutique operation. Leidos has 47,000 employees. That's like a small city's worth of people, all working on these super technical projects. And what does the market think? Well, Wall Street values the company at over $19 billion. So yeah, this is way more than just a government contractor. It's a heavyweight on the New York Stock Exchange, a part of the S&P 500. And check this out. This number shows you their pipeline. It's the total value of contracts they already have in the bag. They have nearly $50 billion worth of work already locked in and waiting to be done. Their future is already secured. Okay, so with numbers this huge, you have to wonder, where is all this money coming from? Who's writing these massive checks? Let's crack open that $17 billion in revenue and see what they're actually selling and, more importantly, who's buying. And the answer really shows you just how woven into the government this company is. So this is really interesting. You can see how diverse their business is. Almost half of it is in national security and digital. Think intelligence, cyber warfare, that kind of thing. But look at this. Almost a third is health and civil. So they're also upgrading IT for government agencies and tackling public health issues. The rest is split between commercial work and classic defense systems. And now, if we look at where they're doing business, the picture gets crystal clear. Almost 90% of their money comes from right here in the United States. They have an international footprint, sure, but their main client, by a long, long shot, is the US government. So a company this huge, this connected, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really get what Leidos is today, we've got to rewind the tape and look at where they came from, and some of the bumps in the road along the way. The company we're talking about wasn't always called Leidos. It actually started way back in '69 as a company called SAIC. For decades, it just grew and grew. But the real game-changing moments happened more recently. In 2013, they did this big strategic split, and the core government business got a new name, Leidos. And then bam, just 3 years later, they merged with Lockheed Martin's giant IT division. That's the move that created the powerhouse we see today. But, that kind of rapid growth doesn't always happen smoothly. The company, both back when it was SAIC and as Leidos, has definitely had its share of controversy. For instance, there was a big FBI software project that cost taxpayers over $100 million and was then abandoned because it just didn't work.
Then there was a massive overbilling scandal in New York City that ended with them paying a jaw-dropping $500 million settlement. And more recently, they've been under the microscope for workplace issues, even getting flagged by the Department of Defense's own Inspector General, and for how they've handled things in the U.S. Antarctic program.
All right, so where does that leave us? We started with one number, one contract, in a government document, and we've unraveled this whole story of a corporate giant that sits right at the intersection of public money and private power. So what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this matter? Well, first, it just goes to show you that sometimes the biggest stories are hiding in plain sight, right there in the fine print. Second, it's a huge reminder of how deeply private companies like Leidos are now part of the government itself. I mean, we're not just talking about building planes anymore. We're talking about them managing our most sensitive data, our public health systems, our intelligence operations. The sheer scale of this public-private partnership is staggering. And it means that if you want to understand how our tax dollars are spent and how the country really runs, you absolutely have to understand these companies. And all of this leaves us with one last, really big question. When the essential work of the government, from defending the country to protecting public health, is done by these private giants, it really makes you think about where the power truly lies, who's really accountable, and what the real price of this public-private future is.